Nation.
SMD Law is the official law firm of the Spartan Nation. Check them out on the interwebs at smdalaw.com or at 866-529-3537. No matter where you are in the state of Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula, it doesn't matter. They have an office near you. So whether you need to send a letter to an annoying neighbor, or you're a criminal and you need defense, maybe you just have problems with elder law, check them out, smdalaw.com today. The official law firm of the Spartan Nation. Call them first. Then you act.
Well, after looking at the film and looking back at the Michigan game, it was still a game where we played pretty well and they played pretty well. I didn't think either team played great, but when you get them back in 10 days from now, it's something that we're putting in the rearview mirror moving forward. I would say that, Cassius had a strange 27 points, but it was the 40 minutes that impressed me the most. And I think we are getting more out of both McQuaid and Goins, and that was one of the things I said to you back when Nick got hurt. Every guy had to step up. We're actually in the last two games, McQuaid is averaging, I think, 12 or 13, and Kenny's about in the same boat. The only thing we're down a little bit is on Xavier hasn't rebounded the ball as well, but we're making some progress in that area, and our margin for error is very slim. You look at what Nick gave us, there's some intangibles of what he gave us, like getting to the free throw line earlier in the game because of the fouls that he brings to the basket, his running of the court. We have not been as good a fast break team right now. We've got to get back to that. And as always, I just wanted to clear something up because it wasn't our writers, but I hear people, on TV talking about, it was kind of like you guys talking about, well, you're playing better without Josh. I'd give my right arm to have Josh back. Well, guys are playing better without Nick. I'd give my right arm to have Nick back. I think both guys did a hell of a job last week for us, and there's so many different reasons why you need different players, and whenever you have a little bit of success or a little bit of failure, we're pretty good at blaming on failure and maybe not appreciate enough on success, but getting Nick back will be important to us when he gets back. Next for us is Indiana. We know we'll have the same team we got now. Kyle Arns is always going to be day-to-day as he was when he was back in the tunnel there. Felt like we were calling a reliever out in baseball. That probably turned you on, Fred, but nobody else. We were calling Kyle out of the bullpen and putting him back in and calling him back out because he had to stay loose. But in Indiana, it's the strangest team. They're 13 and 14. They've changed their lineup a little bit. Two kids that hadn't played, especially the big kid, Davis, hadn't played in a long time before they played us. He played very well. It was Stevens who had a career night against us, and now he's not starting. Between Green and Davis, they tore us up, but they're 4-12 heading into tonight's game against Wisconsin, but they've had so many 2, 3, 4-point losses, and their losses have been single digits. Twice to Iowa, to Purdue, and to Ohio State. Purdue they had beat. When they beat us here, they shot 50% from the three, and they've, I think, been shooting in the, maybe 30%. It was in the 20s when they came in here, and so that was disappointing on us. They out-rebounded us, had 20 offensive rebounds. That was disappointing, and I think we missed, probably exaggerating a little, 70 free throws, 65, but it seemed like 100, and it was ridiculous. The number of free throws we missed, the number of front-end free throws we missed, and yet they outplayed us. And when you get 20 offensive rebounds, you got outplayed. When the team hits 50% from the three, that's usually shooting a lot lower. That means you got outplayed. Romeo Langford is still averaging, I think, 17 points. And Morgan is averaging 14, but they're getting a lot more out of Davis, out of Green. out of a couple other players. They're a very athletic team, and my whole concern now is a little bit about our health and trying to get better. They're gonna have a little captain's practice today. We had yesterday off, and then we'll go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which I think will be good for us. But we got to play a lot better than we played here.
John Wangler said on my radio show a couple years ago, Tom, that he felt it hurt Michigan that since Bo had passed, they had not taken Michigan State as seriously as Michigan State takes them. Reportedly, John Beilein said before the game it was a big game, but as big as Minnesota. Does it help this school and your program that you do circle that game? It does mean more. You talk about it all year. Do you believe it helps you guys?
Well, it probably helps me so much that I'm not going to talk about Michigan anymore because we don't play them, and I don't mean that insultingly. But, the biggest problem when you have a win, and it's a big win. It would have been a big win for them. It'll be a big win here. If they win, it'll be a big win if we win. It's always going to mean more. I mean, George Perla said they all count one. My respect to him, that's not true. And if we lose, it won't count as one loss for me. I mean, that's just the way it is. But at the same time, it doesn't define you. It doesn't make the season. What defines you is how you finish at the end. And so I'm not, not going to insult, not going to give credit. That game's over, and our biggest concern right now, Ando, is to be moving forward and fixating on the next game. I mean, we got 3 games left, and we're mathematically in a position where destiny's in our own hands. And that doesn't happen very often. I don't need any help anymore from anybody. And so all I want to make sure we do is worry about Indiana, and then worry about Nebraska, and then worry about Michigan in that order. And so I'll, even though I respect it, and even though I kind of went over like I always do, what I saw in the film, we're going to move forward. And I think the game means a lot to every human being that is involved with Michigan or Michigan State, whether it be football, whether it be basketball, whether it be hockey, whether it be gymnastics, whether it be baseball. That's what rivalries are. And yet, he is right, in the standings, we beat Michigan and, lose to Nebraska or who's ever in last place in our league. As far as our ultimate goal, it doesn't change it. So you feel good for a week. You don't feel any better for the summer.
You mentioned the other day about making Cassius a captain, but with McQuaid, he said that McQuaid was kind of on fire last week in terms of that. With Josh out, how much more has been thrust on Matt in terms of the leadership of this group? Lots.
Because, the one thing about Cassius, he is becoming, Cassius is a great case study to me of, as Barkley said the other day, which I absolutely loved, the process. The process of struggling a little bit as a freshman. I talked to Miles last night. He just made his first 2 starts in a row, and I told him there's a process, Miles, and to me, Cassius is part of that process. He's growing. The next part of his process is to become even a better leader. He leads by example better than any guy in America. If you looked at on the court, off the court, in the classroom, all the things he does. But to be a great leader, you have to be able to rally other people around you. And, Josh was the best at that. And then McQuaid, I think, really saw 2 things that he needed to do. He needed to become the better defensive player because he knew Josh was that, and he needed to become a better leader. And if I thought you said Cassius said McQuaid was on fire. I said McQuaid. He was a very, very, very good leader. And so was Josh, and at halftime, so was Nick. I saw a different side of Nick. And so it's by committee, but right now, Matt McQuaid, I think, has taken all the things he's learned from Denzel, from Tum Tum, from Josh, and he's putting them together to become our best vocal leader. And yet I think Cassius is growing in that area, and it'll be another great part of his process to grow in that area and make a difference in that area, and I think he's ready to do that and wants to do that.
Tom, Cassius seems like the kind of guy, you didn't see him play basketball and you just looked at him, you wouldn't necessarily think like he's a phenomenal athlete, and he's in better shape now than he was before. Take me back to watching him in high school, what your early impressions were of him, and if you ever thought he could be the kind of player that's doing what he's doing now, which no one's doing in the country.
I said this when I saw him as a freshman or sophomore. I thought he could be the best passer since Magic Johnson here. I didn't say the best player. I said the best passer, because he has so much intelligence. He has a great basketball IQ. He just does a lot of things well, and he did them then. Questioned a little bit his athletic ability in that, but I have also said this 100 times. I never saw his shooting. What was great about the performance last weekend was he didn't make a three. I don't know if there's been many games this year he didn't make a three. And he still had a phenomenal performance, which kind of proves your point, but he became a much better shooter than I ever knew he was. So that was not well evaluated by me. His coach, his dad, and other people told me, he can shoot it, But I didn't see that as much in high school. So I never thought he could become what he's becoming, and I still think he has a big ceiling on where he can get. I think he's changed his body a lot. I think he can take another step there. I think, which would help his athleticism. I think his defense is improving. I think it's going to improve again. I think he's starting to really figure out those ball screens like I thought he would. But, he's still got some room to grow, and that's what's exciting about it.
Forgive me, what's a captain's practice?
Where there's no coaches. They said they wanted to shoot. So I said, that's good. It's their way to get rid of me. I don't have that in baseball.
So they run it.
Yeah, I guess yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have them all the time here because the coaching isn't very good, so we tell the captains to take over the team. But we do have them once in a while, yeah. All kidding aside.
Here's your beer trap. The whole world loves you, the bandwagon's full, the Twitter world is praising you. Sometimes you hate that, but do you fear about the residual of that less with this team than maybe you have some others, if you know what I mean?
I do a little bit. I fear it every day because I don't think any one of us have any clue. I learned a great lesson a few years ago upon a death of a friend of mine's dad, that you can never tell somebody you know what they're going through unless they've gone through it themselves. And so I never, ever do that. Now I can do it because my father passed in that respect. But I've never been a Division I athlete. Northern Michigan to the UP is Division I, but it's not to the rest of the country. So never had the scrutinization as an athlete. And so it's hard to appreciate it, but most of you haven't either. And so whether you read about it, whether you write about it, whether you see it on Twitter, I think we blow it off a lot of times on how it would affect somebody positively or negatively. I don't read the stuff that you're talking about, so I don't know. But I do know what I think my players read, and it's always a worry now, because it's a worry both ways. You win, you worry. You lose, you worry, because there's no happy medium. I think it was Jordy Nelson talking about Aaron Rodgers the other day. He did say that, the media feasts on the negative, and Twitter is 10 times that. And so we do have to be concerned of that stuff, and I have an academic meeting at 3 to go over, because we missed some school, and then I'm going to tell them that, I'm going to talk to them about focusing on one game at a time. There hasn't been a lot of years where everything was totally in our hands at this time of year. There's been some, but you always need help from somebody. And I just look at this as we don't need any help. We just have to take care of our own business. And when you're in a position like that, your leadership better be good enough that you close out the outside world and you focus in for 2 weeks. That's great in theory, not always great in reality. And that's the one part that I wish, I don't know how you, maybe if you really hire younger coaches, you can do it. I wish you could go through it as a player and then go through it as a coach, but you know, the Twitter era isn't that old, so I can't do both.
You were pretty vocal on Sunday in praising your coaching staff for the job they did in preparing. I wonder how is the challenge different in going through a stretch when you got key guys in and out, and just for coaches game planning and kind of keeping things going?
You know, coaches, assistant coaches always do a good job, but you know, we've really made an emphasis this year on trying to all be on the same page on everything. You know, there's coaching staffs are no different than playing groups, or no different than marriage or your own family. I mean, there's always going to be spats and, you know, best friends. You know, it always happens that way. But I think there's been, if I used a word that I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, and maybe it's because of the injuries, maybe it's because of all the things that's happened. But, you know, you always tell your team that it's just the players and coaches in this room that really know what's going on, and, you know, because it is the truth. And I think the word trust has really taken over this team a little bit. I think the players trust each other. I think the coaches trust each other. I think the players trust the coaches, and I think the coaches are starting to trust the players. And you say that's simple, but it's not simple. It doesn't always happen. And I think that's starting to happen more and more, and probably because of necessity. You know, we're running out of bodies, and our margin for error is minimal. And I mean, you sit there and just hope nobody gets in a foul trouble or this and that, just the reality of what you do. But when you do that, it also makes things like turnovers. You know, you talk more about them and say, guys, we're not going to win if we do now because our margin for error is so small. Cutting out, you know, I know you're going to have some slippage, but if you do, we're going to lose, you know. And I don't think that's pressure. I think that's just reality of where we are. And I think they believe it. I think they trust it. And I think my staff has done a good job. I've made sure that each one of them spend a little more time with their group than normal, just because, you know, you can wear on a team too. So you got to be careful of that. But we're trying to talk about so many things that maybe, you know, key subs now are key players, or average subs before are key players now. So that brings the team together too. So I don't know, you know, if you ask me exactly where we are, I felt like we've been making progress. When Nick went down, it was, I mean, it was not a lot of good days in the office as far as figuring out what we could do, but kind of band-aided some things together, and sometimes those don't always last forever, but we can hold on. You know, we're going to go down and try to win another game and just take it one at a time.
Tom, I know we've talked a lot about the point guard being the quarterback, and through your time here, you've had a lot of good point guards. Not all of them have been the greatest leaders, some of them have been, but how does it affect a team or make them better when that point guard is playing at a certain level and also becomes that sort of leader all at the same time?
Well, you know, there's a million different ways to leadership. You always hear that he leads by example, which is the one I tell you guys I hate, okay? But leading by consistency is pretty good too. You know, like Cassius is a very consistent player. I mean, unlike me, he's a little more level, which is probably good. Maybe we make a good team because I don't know if I'm Frick and he's Frack or whatever we are, but it does have a balance to it. And but I think when your best players become your hardest workers and your best leaders, the most recent was Denzel, you know, and I think Cassius, what he is he's smart enough to see what's needed. Like, he's not a very selfish kid. That's a neat thing. I mean, took 13 shots in a game that, you know, you'd think you'd have to take more because of our situation. He made other people better, which is a great form of leadership. You know, I'm always going to push the vocal part because I just believe in it. And he is getting better at it. And he takes that final step, and now, he's done some things that 3 or 4 and maybe at least the history since I've been here have done. And I'll include Magic in that, since I was an assistant to the guy who coached him, and I learned all the stories about him. So, yeah, I think it's very important, and I think you're right. We've had some good point guards. Some have not been as reliable in one way. I mean, you're talking about a kid who does it off the court, on the court, in the classroom, and now is starting to take on some of those other qualities. That puts him in rare air.
Sort of piggybacking off Kyle's question a little bit, you mentioned your coaching staff, you also mentioned your scout team as being a major factor in Sunday's win. Was there anything specific they did during the week that you thought really kind of helped prepare the team?
Yeah, Brock Washington did a phenomenal job along with Jack Hoiberg. Those 2 guys are really good, and we're getting more out of Bingham in that area. And of course, Connor George, as a shooter and playing pool. And so we had different guys playing. And what those guys did is they came in and watched the individual film. I mean, a lot of it on what each guy from Michigan did. What's their favorite move? What's their go-to move? Just the different idiosyncrasies of what they go about. And I just thought it was over and above, or maybe everybody was a little more focused. I mean, I don't know why, but it hit me, and that's why I said at the end of the game, as most big games are, you need a total effort, staff, players, assistants, trainers, doctors. I mean, we had people working on Kyle, the whole time he was in Ann Arbor, and so I thought everybody did their job, and that's how you win games. So that scout team was valuable in that respect.
Did Max help?
Max didn't do a damn thing, but he's not old. He hasn't been here long enough. He's learning the ropes yet. What Max is good at is, okay, one last question, let's get the hell out of here. And that's about all Max is good at.
Tom, sorry, I'm going to pull a Hondo and ask a 2-parter.
Definition.
A lot of opposing coaches have come in here this season and talked about Goins and McQuaid, and with the implication that maybe we or outside folks don't understand how good they are. What is your definition of a role player, and are these 2 role players in your mind at this point?
Maybe to not insult you and insult me, maybe because I don't do a good enough job of appreciating what they do. Kenny has, some guys grow year to year, and he's grown a little bit year to year. But I'm not sure I've had anybody who's grown as much in a season. He's grown in a season as far as he's become a little tougher. He's become a consistent rebounder. He's become a very good defender. I don't think he gets the credit for that. And most of all, what's easiest to see, he's become a fairly reliable shooter. And that's easy one to see. The other ones are more difficult to see. So in Kenny, boy, if I'm saying he's a role player, that's a bad job on my part, because role players plays their roles to help you win. I think he's a big part of us winning. I think there's a little difference. And in Matt McQuaid, the best thing I can say about Matt is he's selfless. He and so is Kenny, but Matt has given up sometimes shooting and just kind of worked his tail off defensively. And I've been on a rampage the last couple of weeks about why he should be. I'm not trying to just promote him as Defensive Player of the Year, but if you just look at the players he's guarded, even Poole, he hit 2 threes at the end on different guys, but very good players that he's held way below their averages. That is a consistent part. I think what I've been blessed with is I've got consistent point guard play. I've got consistency in Kenny Goins. I've got consistency, and I know that if I put Matt McQuaid on somebody, I know what I'm going to get. When you go into a game and you can feel that, That's always more relaxing. So they're role players because they got a role to do. They're important players because their roles are now more than one-dimensional. You know, Xavier last year was to defend and rebound, and now he's got to do more. I mean, Matt, when he's making shots and, you know, getting assists, playing defense, running his lane, doing his job there, he's got a lot on his plate to do for what is a significant amount more minutes than we thought he'd have when we put it up on the board in September and said, okay, this guy's going to play this many minutes, this guy. That board has been blown up, you know. And I think both guys, they're not Cassius, but they moved in more to the more than role player. Maybe we'll come up with a new term. Second part of that question, was that both parts?
That was more or less both parts.
Hondo just
See, yours not as good as Hondo's, because Hondo's are completely different, and I get confused, and I have to write them down so I remember, so it's a little more difficult for me.
I did say two-parter, not two questions.
Okay, yeah, you did.
Tom, just I wanted to ask about Kenny as well. You've talked about him being one of those guys you want to see go from like the game to obsessed with the game and everything. Have you seen him sort of inch toward that this year, just with the year he's had and how much he's been relied upon? And
I have. I mean, he's been in here more. Like I said, he's always liked it. I think we moved him up to loving it. There's still room to live in it. There's still a little room in there for living it. And we've got, who knows, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks left. You know, I'm gonna press upon him. You know, it's easier when you've had some success to keep growing. You know, I mean, that's just human. And so today I'm hoping the love turns into live.
What are some of those things in his life, I guess, you think that maybe where he had other attention? I know that's a better question for him. I just don't know. You said he was smart and interested in some other things that he had.
Very high test score, very good student. I mean, everybody doesn't. You can really love your job and not make it an obsession. And I'm not sure how good you can be unless you're obsessed with what you do. And I bet you there's more players that love their job than live their job. I mean, I said early on, I thought, Josh and Cueto were two guys that lived. Denzel and Bryn lived it. A lot of other good players, Talk to Costello about it all the time. Draymond, he liked to play, then he loved to play. And his last year, he, moved into that. Matt, just basketball was nice, fun, 6'9", I'll play it, I'll get a scholarship. And then, started to grow on him. Now, guy's up there watching film, he's got his leg up, he's more obsessed than he was. It happens at different times in your life. And that's why I'm never satisfied. I'm always pushing guys to be obsessed with what they want to be if they want to be great at it. And I think Kenny is, he hangs around with Matt more. I mean, Cassius, I see, he's just so polished and so even keel. When you're obsessed, you're probably a little bit more like this. So I'm not saying it's always great. That's my belief. You got to be obsessed with whatever you're doing, whatever I'm doing, whatever they're doing, if you're going to be elite at it. And Kenny's making surprise. If you ask Kenny if he spent more time on basketball this summer and this year than he has in his life, I'm sure he'd tell you yes. I'm not positive. I think he would.
You won doing some different things against Michigan. The fast break really wasn't there, mostly ball screens with Cassius, even defensively. Are there things you found in terms of formula that you really like going forward in this game that were any different?
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like that we didn't run. That was a big part of our game plan, but we didn't rebound very well the first half. Give them credit for that. They probably put an emphasis on that, and I think they did a good job of getting back, but I did not think we ran with the same oomph, and that there might have been a positive to it. I kept saying in huddles, I asked Cash if he's okay, and he looked as fresh at the beginning as he did at the end, and maybe because we weren't pushing it as hard, so there might have been a plus. But I think what I learned is what all my buddies in the NBA tell me, that, it's okay to make adjustments. And we made a few adjustments. They'll make a few adjustments. That's kind of the way it works now, you know. When you play 2 games in such a short period of time, I don't know if we'll play them exactly like we did. I'm not saying that secretively. I think there's a few things we learned in the film the next day. We watched it. You don't get to do this very often, where you play 2 teams in 12 or 13 days. So I still think we got to defend, we got to rebound, we got to run. Okay, we defended pretty well. We didn't rebound very well. We didn't run. So we did one of the 3 in that game. And we did some other things that we felt we could do, and but that's not the staple of who we are or what we are, and nor do I want it to be. And maybe what I can do is get back to the 3 things that are really important, and then maybe these things that I've learned on the side, we can start making them more important.
It's kind of related, but as you guys appear to become more reliant on Cassius in the ball screen, how do you anticipate him responding to different coverages that you're likely going to see more attention in those scenarios, especially just on the flex that he can't really prepare for?
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem. That's why when you take Nick out of the post and people don't have to have an eye and a half on Nick, it gives them room to do other things. I mean, there's no question there's going to be some chess matches played, and some of the things we did, you know, were in-game things, to be honest with you. And I think we're going to have to be prepared for that a lot coming up. It's just the nature of who we've become because of the situation we've been in. And, so we're going to have to do a better job, not being stubborn on, 1 or 2 ways of doing things. And I'm not worried about him. He's flexible. What impressed me most about him was he didn't try to take the game over and dribble it to death and make plays for himself. He tried to take the game over and make other people better. And that's a hell of a quality to have in a big game when there was pressure on him, and there will be again. But he's a junior. He's a great player. That's kind of why he came here, and that's what he should do. And so I'm anxious to see the different ways Indiana covers things a little different than Michigan did, and probably Nebraska. Somebody's going to zone us or play us different there. But I think we're flexible. We'll deal with it.
This is actually 2 questions, just 2 random questions. But
so we got 2 parts.
Yeah,
We got.
there's probably about 3 more questions.
Whatever Honda's got.
Next
now
says
we got
to
you.
pick one.
Huh?
Next says to pick one.
Well, the first one was just more or less the oddity of making a guy captain midseason. You did it with Draymond his sophomore year. It's just the oddity of that, and is it easier when it's a guy like Cassius to do that?
I personally, I don't think it's odd. I think we've been placed in a situation. I think a guy proved to me some things that he could do, and I also think it's my way of imposing my beliefs on what I think is needed for us to be a great team, and maybe as important, him to be an elite player. And I think, so I don't look at this at all. I mean, Cassius, in a lot of people's minds, including their own team and players, was a leader from the beginning. It's just that what I'm trying to tell him is now you got to lead with your voice, which hasn't been maybe his total strength. Okay, he's allowed one weakness. I mean, he coaches the team, he makes the popcorn, he runs the pick and roll, and he scores points, and he makes his free throws. So if I don't have something to pick on him for, what the hell good am I? It'd be no fun to coach him. So I'm going to just keep coaching any part that I see that could help us and him. Make sure the emphasis is in us and him, and not just to help us, and it's not just to help him. I think both parties grow from this, and I feel good about it. I think he feels good about it.
And the second part was, and it's totally different, but we've really talked a lot about Xavier and the job he's done maybe in the last 2 games, and I don't necessarily want to say different role that he's done, but more expanded role with what he's done. And what have you seen from him, especially when he gets the ball up high? He's a different kind of guy than Nick, because what he can do with the ball in his hands off the bounds.
Yeah, he's a little better putting it on the floor from there. But Xavier is he's a pretty versatile kid. You know, what he doesn't do is score. I think he spent a lot of the summer listening to people tell him he's got to be able to shoot the ball, shoot the ball, shoot the ball. And where Nick has an incredible knack in the post to score. I mean, it's sometimes unorthodox, but as NBA people tell me, as my friends tell me, you know, he gets it down there, and he finds a way, and gets very few shots blocked, tough enough to handle things. Xavier, that's an area he's got to grow in, even though Xavier has the same toughness and strength, and he's maybe athletic ability, and yet Xavier's a little better at putting it on the floor from up there, maybe at making a pass and sprinting into those screens, because that's what he's had to do to play. And so I'm kind of learning as I go through this too, you know, and I think I'll be able to help Nick become even a better player when he gets back, and help Xavier in the off season on some of the things Nick is so good at. But Xavier he's been solid since the second half of last year, you know. He's, again, another guy with a very high basketball IQ. He's starting to play a little bit more like a Draymond, but he's got he can guard different people. But at the same time, we got to make sure that he can do some things on that low post too, which he has to do. He's been shooting very well from the line, so we get him fouled. That's a good thing too.
I'm curious, when Miles calls and it's not payday, does he ever say, "Gee, Coach, I wish I could be there and be a part of this"?
Oh, I can show you a great text from last night. You know, he played Draymond last night. They played against each other, and Miles made, I think, his second start. So, you know, those guys make a lot of money, and there's a lot of things, but there are very few that don't always come back, like Mariucci and I living in that trailer park in Northern Michigan University, man. Those were the fun days. Those were the good times. And, you know, as he said last night, he tell the guys, I miss you guys, I miss them. And that's true. I mean, that's not phony. And I think Miles will still go down as one of the all-time, I told him last night, the most selfless, a man of being a star player and having humility that's beyond. Yeah, I think what they do is they'd like to be back here going to college, making their money, that'd be a hell of a deal, wouldn't it?
Tom, my father used to say that as a man becomes more successful, writing a check becomes easy. You know if he cares when he gives his time. Several donors have commented to me, even in season, you have been working your tail off. Almost $10 million has been raised for the new hockey building. What is it about this hockey building and this program in Danton that you buy in because the donors are donating because of you?
I don't know if it's because of me, but I have been on a little bit of a, you know, this summer when I went down to Arizona, we met with some people, and, you know, Ando, I believe in Michigan State University, and I believe in everything about it. And what's not right, I hope I get a chance to help fix. And what is right, I hope I get a chance to help make better. I do think that, you know, hockey has needed an uplift. Some of our other sports have needed them. We've done some things. You know, I see lights going in over at baseball. I mean, all these things that just make us better. You know, football needs some things that I'm going to try to help them on. I'm not going to help us on any of the facility things right now because somebody did a good job of helping us already. my turn to help somebody else. But I believe in that just like I believe in the other academic programs here. And I told you I'm on a new mission, and that's to win in basketball, but to make this the greatest, safest, best university in the country. And I'm going to do that until I'm done. Then I'll probably do it after I'm done. Anything else? All right, gang. Appreciate it. Off to a recruiting trip here.